And so you'd think when a franchise says, we're going to teach you everything you need to know to run a successful business. Well, there's one thing they don't. And that is it's an area where people really struggle, how to find them, how to retain them, how to boost their performance. Okay, so you just put your finger on a huge thing in franchising. The average person in a management position goes 10 years managing people before they ever get any formal management training.
What are you seeing and hearing from franchisees out there as some of the things and challenges that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis in their business?
Sure. Well, this is now my second book, and my goal with books is to identify a problem and try to provide solutions. And so with The Wealthy Franchisee, there was a handful of other books out there for franchisees, but I didn't see much about the human side of it, right? But I hear franchisees getting in their own way, the sometimes tension between franchisee and franchisor. And so all those human dynamics in the franchise world, I found very interesting, very problematic. And so I wanted to address that with this book. So that gave me a lot of exposure to other people in the franchise world. And I interviewed all these great people and some struggling people, and they come and talk to me after conferences where I speak. And of everything I discussed in that first book, the thing that got the most follow-up questions and the most interesting and sometimes, desperate conversations was franchisees' relationships with employees, and specifically their hourly employees, that they really struggle with them. Especially as, new generations enter the workforce. People talk about kids these days and no one wants to work. And then the pandemic happened and then everyone let their employees go and then invited them back, but then they couldn't find employees. It's an area where people really struggle, how to find them, how to retain them, how to boost their performance. And so seeing that there was such a challenge there, I wanted to tackle that. And certainly I had to tackle it when I own my businesses. So I've spent the last year and a half really looking at all these other businesses, not just in franchising, but a variety of industries, to find people who have cracked the code with hourly workers. And so that's what I wanted to focus on in this book. And so I'm super excited to get it out there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm excited to have the conversation because I remember running multiple, QSR franchises, one on the opposite side of the country, and navigating sometimes the tensions between my manager and some of the other employees, and just the different things that would happen, and just running a business in California, which has quite a few more regulations than most states when it comes to operating a business.
I've heard folks at IFA call it the People's Republic of California.
Sounds fitting.
I guess. I try not to take offense, but
yeah, because you're in LA, right? Is that?
I'm in LA, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you know what the deal is.
I know what the deal is.
Yeah. So here's what's fascinating to me, and I had to learn this a little bit hard dose of truth, was that I wasn't a great leader. I was still learning how to be a leader. And so what do you find to be that fine line or balance of maybe helping franchisees to realize maybe it's not their employees and it's them? How do they know if it's them and not their team?
Okay, so you just put your finger on a huge thing in franchising. When a franchisor vets a franchisee, they're obviously, looking at their finances and a few other things. But the experience of managing employees is not necessarily one of them. And the experience of managing hourly employees isn't one of them. A lot of people come into franchising exiting the corporate world. They've been in an environment with those on salary, those who are working full time. Maybe they've led large teams of those kinds of people. Then they get into franchising and they're building teams who might be getting, minimum wage or just a little bit above that. Maybe it's a different age group, all the things that are different between salary workers and hourly workers. And I really get into that in the book. And then they're in shock because all those tactics that worked in that white collar environment aren't working with teenagers, people in their 20s, people who are, their shifts are constantly changing. And so you'd think when a franchise says, we're going to teach you everything you need to know to run a successful business. Well, there's one thing they don't, and that is how to manage hourly workers. And so you might have someone with no experience in management. Suddenly they're the boss. They have to build a team. But number one, a lot of franchisors, they themselves don't know how to really manage them, right? They're experts in pest control, in senior in-home care, in cheeseburgers, frozen yogurt. But the actual managing of people may not be their expertise. That's number one. But the second issue, which I know that you're well aware of, is lawyers have scared franchisors away from getting into anything HR related for fear of being labeled joint employers, right? So franchisors will teach franchisees everything about marketing, maybe even get into bookkeeping and certainly the system. But when it comes to managing employees, they either don't know or they're too scared to get into it. So I think that's one reason why it is a huge problem. Well, as we know, that might be about to change, and hopefully, that won't be the case. But if franchisors are going to be considered joint employers with all that added liability and responsibility, they're going to then have to protect themselves, are going to have to get more involved in how employees are managed and creating a better manager experience. But I think you're right. It's not just the employees, it's franchisees and their managers. And perhaps they don't know as much as they think they know, or they really just don't have the skill set. The average person in a management position goes 10 years managing people before they ever get any formal management training. So think about the damage that they can do in that time. And so I think that's a huge problem in franchising and a lot of industries.
If you enjoyed this short clip from the podcast, you can check out another short clip right here. Or if you want to watch the full episode of this podcast, you can watch that here. And remember, knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.